the SpED Space podcast with your host. That's me, Nick Coletti. Today I'm joined by Pete Kozak. Thanks for being here, Pete.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Pete, right off the bat, this podcast is about everything and anything related to special education.
Wonderful.
And I like to open with the same question every time.
Great.
How are you related to special education? What brings you
So
here?
I've been in the general field of special needs for 15 years or so. I've been a teacher. I've been a behavioral therapist. I've been a job coach. I've worked privately for families. I've worked at different agencies, different schools. So I've done quite a lot within the field in different capacities.
Yeah. And you've also shifted into the kind of the I want to hear more about that, but the really cool thing that I got to witness earlier this week, and then we'll kind of bounce around there. What are you doing now as in that field?
So I founded a nonprofit this year, officially a nonprofit this year, called Especially Everyone. And that is very much a culmination of all of the experiences I've had in those 15 years that I just referred to, in pulling different things that have happened, different experiences, and turned it into an organization.
Yeah. So I got to, you're kind enough to have me come by. I got there a little late. I was supposed to help, but got there.
You were helpful just being there.
My car died. I was like, oh my goodness. But I got there like right when you guys started, I think. It was like first or second song, I hope.
Yeah.
And you guys are playing music for, it's an inclusive environment, inclusive concerts. Is that a good way of describing it?
Yeah, so that was one way that we do it. That's our class that we teach every week at Ableist here in Greenwich.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all of the capacities of Especially Everyone are about creating inclusive environments through music.
Cool.
Yeah.
So okay, so I didn't realize that. So but I'm glad I'm asking a question. So that's considered a class. Therefore, so you're teaching like musical, dance, like everything, anything, and everything.
It's really about. It's not as much about teaching the musical skills as it is about utilizing music as a vehicle to connect and to sort of just live, just have a good time.
Yeah.
We're not so focused on teaching, guitar chords or like. I'm sure that will come up down the line at some point.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's about making music or presenting music in a manner that allows people to just jump in and feel that feeling.
Yeah, it was really fun in there. Like,
I'm glad you feel that.
It was a good time. Yeah, I mean, everybody was into it.
It's an energy. Every week we're there, it continues to build.
Yeah.
Now we're forming relationships with each of the people, and it's exciting.
It was really cool to see you shouting out all their names, and like they were, you could tell that obviously that wasn't your first time there. Like they knew you knew them, and it was like you were calling out for so and so to do this and so to do that. You had a bunch of different activities going on, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That you're getting everybody to buy in and jump in, and I mean literally jump in. Like
it gets lively. We've brought the whole band there on specific weeks, and they'll leave. We'll have a throwdown at 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, and like we'll all leave and be sweating, and it's like time for lunch. Like
yeah.
But it's a good time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you noticed the names, because that is a huge part of of what we're doing. It's sort of unique at Ableist because we know everyone's names, but at our shows we hand out name tags because that I love to be able to incorporate someone's name on the microphone like that in itself is a huge element of the inclusivity of the performance. Or it's if you hear that, people are responding.
Oh, I'm sure.
And doing a whole thing.
I mean, I can only imagine. Like, working in the field, I know how much it means to be included in things like that, and then just to hear when you hear your name, it you respond to it. Obviously, it's your name, but then to hear it over a microphone in a concert setting, I mean that must be electrifying.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my goodness, I'm being asked to do something. What's up? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, and we build it into our shows in different ways. And we have an original song called "What's Your Name," where the whole shtick is we've introduced the members of the band. We haven't met the members of the audience. We're gonna come meet you, and we weave through the crowd. And I utilize the name tags and I say, "Hey, Adam, how you doing?" and all that stuff. And it's been a really cool moment.
Yeah.
We also have another part of our show called "That's My Move." It's another original song, and the whole concept of the song is we learn your dance move. So it's sort of like a 90s hip hop type of song.
Yeah.
We clear the floor. We say, who wants to come up and show a dance move? And then we do the Kayla. We do the whoever it is.
Yeah.
And which is really hard to do without a name tag. So.
Yeah. That's very fun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you had a bunch of other things. Like you had, I really loved the one part you were playing Satisfaction and you had a wheel. And so you were teaching like slow tempo, medium tempo, high tempo, and you would just play the song. Like they would come up, spin the wheel, and then you would play the different tempos. As a musician myself, that was just, it was so cool to see music being taught in that way, and then also just enjoyed and experienced in that way. Like it's just, it was a really, really cool, fun experience.
I'm glad that's what you took from it. Yeah. And I think that's a good example too of like, we're interested in teaching music, but like, you don't have to fully understand it. It's just kind of like, it's these concepts transcend music. And I think even beyond the field of special needs, there's this barrier that exists between people and music where it's like, oh, I don't play an instrument,
right,
or I'm not good, or whatever that is. And it's like, as much as we are trying to connect with this, specifically with the special needs community, we've also had people on stage that just have never had a chance to go on stage.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understood many years ago that that's something I don't take it for granted, but it's been a huge part of my life that's incredibly accessible to me. I could put a band together. I could put a show together any time. I know how to do those things, and I've done it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
There's a whole realm of people just in the typical population that have never had the opportunity to do that. And it's like, even just in that capacity, it's really cool to offer that opportunity.
And you can just tell in that room, it's so non-judgmental,
Yep.
right? Like also as a musician, like I know, especially original work, like I know that feeling of dread that can come up. Like when you go to play for somebody for the first time, like this thing that I created, I wrote lyrics and I put a song together and like, do you like it? You know what I mean? It's like this whole expectation. In there, it was just like, you could just go for it and just, it's all good,
I'm so happy you picked up on that, because that is the feedback I'm getting from the band. And ironically, that was the thing that I didn't really plan for. I had designed the show to accommodate the components of like different special needs events that I had gone to.
Yeah.
That sort of just felt like watered down regular events, right? Like, and it was like that, but we're not doing this the right way.
Yeah.
And I did a few of them, and what was happening was the band was responding, and I hadn't accounted for that. And it was like, I feel just so liberated. Like, it's not about me in this moment. And, we've all been in original bands for so long and put our art out there. It was like, listen to this thing that I've done. And the reality is, like, people care for a fraction of the time that you hope they will. And they move on to the next thing. And it's like, you've poured your heart and soul into this record. And it's like, they're, oh, cool. Yeah. It's like, come on, man. But I hear it in my own playing. Like, I will go try something without even thinking about it. Whereas when I'm playing my original music on a stage, it's I don't know, there's some psychological thing that stands in my way. And in those settings, it's like,
it's not there.
We've never played it. We've never played, whatever. It'll work. It'll be fine. And it always is. It's like, okay. But
and I just to kind of come back to that, like the show, you can tell first and foremost, it is a show. It's a concert. Like it's obviously it's inclusive and all that, but like I feel like, and I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you can tell you're walking in like you guys are performing. You are like, for sure, they're going to come to an actual show, but it's just in the sense it's inclusive, right?
Yeah.
It's a way to include them in the playing of the music, but it also in a sense that it's accessible for them.
Yeah.
Was that intentional? I mean, again,
it's very intentional.
Yeah,
I mean, that was really at the core of the whole principle of it. Is it has to be. It has to be good, right? Because if it's not, it turns into like, like that is the last thing that I want for it to. I want people to walk out and be like, oh my God, like that band was awesome, or that song was awesome, or whatever it is. Like that's when you're reaching when we've done it right. Is when a full family of an 8-year-old, an autistic brother, and the mom and the grandma are all like, I had a great time at that show. Like, okay, cool. That was inclusive. If it's not that, it's not the level of inclusivity that we're going for.
So I came and saw you guys play at Ableist on Wednesday, and you were just a 2-piece. It was you and Joe. Great guitar player.
He's
really good guitar player.
Yeah. Specifically on the acoustic guitar, I love when Joe plays it because he plays it so uniquely. It's very percussive. He does a lot of chord melodies.
Oh, it sounded great.
It sounds like there's 3 people playing.
Well, I was gonna say you guys sounded. I mean, I'm a bass player, so like I definitely was like, I need some.
Yeah, it needs some more. Low end.
But that's my own.
We feel that way too. Yeah.
It's a bass.
We'd love to have a bass player. Come hang
anytime, man. Next time for sure. I'd love to. But it was cool because you guys really like commanded the room in a very all props to you guys. Like I could just sit here the whole time but it was really cool to see. So during that time, just to kind of paint a picture, because obviously this is an audio podcast, or even if the camera's here, you still can't see what I saw the other day. That's how reality works. So it's a relatively small room, not super big or anything. Medium-sized room, like classroom kind of thing size. And when I walked in, everybody was either up on the floor dancing along with you guys or at their seats. But at the seats, you had different like hand drums all around, right? And I'm not great with the names of those kind of, but like not bongos, but like the djembe.
Yeah, we had a couple djembes. Yeah. Some of those are actually ableists because they have a drum circle that comes in once a week.
Okay.
And I bring a few myself. Depending on the day and the class, we're very deliberate about how we. I think I'll back out a little bit. I think one place that people go wrong right off the bat with attempting to do this type of thing is they hand out hand percussion. That's the first thing people think to start with. And in my experience, you lose control instantly.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand how cutting the sound of a tambourine can be, because it's like anyone feel like, oh yeah, give that tambourines.
No.
One, you have to have some semblance of rhythm to like actually contribute to that.
Yeah.
And two, a tambourine can kind of ruin a lot of songs.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you have multiple going at the same time.
There's not like a right or wrong way to play instruments, and I'm not here to say that. But like a tambourine kind of needs to get played on the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you don't do that, or at least on the beat, right? At least 4 on the floor. Like if you do anything else with a tambourine, it's like the snare drum. It will cut through everything.
Yeah.
And so very much so if you play off beat or anything like that, yeah, no, I hear you. So you don't have those things.
Well, we hand those out because they're safe and they work, right?
Yeah.
With the songs. We often
the hand drums now.
The hand drums.
You didn't have a tambourine there.
Well, yeah. So we don't. There's like I have jingle bells. I have tambourines. I will either like sort of watch people and assess their level of rhythm before I do that.
Yeah.
Because again, at the end of the day, it has to sound good. And it will not if it's aversive to the audience. We're actually counteractive to what we're trying to do. So it's like there is a lot of deliberate decisions that go into what or the way that we're incorporating our audience. In the sense that you experienced it, those drums don't cut.
No.
The people that we hand them out to, we know that it will be fine.
Yeah.
And we often try to collect them. I don't think we did collect them on Wednesday because it was just
you
was working.
You kept handing them out actually.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, like when I got in there, I think there was 3 out, and then maybe after the 3rd or 4th song, you went and you had somebody helping you.
Oh yeah, that's my mother-in-law.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. You asked her to hand out even more drums. So you had more. Is that what they're called? Drum? I mean,
djembe.
Djembe. Yeah.
It's a drum.
Yeah. They were just handing them out. So by the end, it felt like you were there. I mean, maybe I'm just misremembering it, but it felt like there was like 4 or 5 out.
Yeah, I think we had at least 5. And during our full production, we have a part of the show where we actually bring floor toms out.
Oh, cool.
And we play bang on the drum.
Yeah.
And we like try to do some call and answer stuff on the drums. It's something we're still working through.
Yeah.
But even in those sense, I have a pad on the drum, right?
Yes.
Like we don't want it to be too loud and for people to, because we inevitably lose control. Like, and we've sort of even built that into the show where it's like, now go crazy, because everyone's just dying to go crazy and bang the hell out of the drum. So, we let them at a certain point, but we try to keep it structured as much as we can.
And just for people that don't know, like a pat on the drum is essentially like a mute. Yeah. Like you're still going to get something out of it, but it's going to be much less than you would imagine a live drum set.
Exactly.
Does. Yep. Speaking of that, so I believe part of the inclusivity factor, I noticed immediately when I walked in, as a musician and as someone, I limited drummer, but I could play the drums. First thing I noticed is your kit. You have a hi-hat, snare, drum, kick drum. That's it. No crashes.
No.
Is that, I'm assuming that's intentional, or is that a space thing?
So that is more of a space and carry thing.
Okay.
Because we're doing this weekly, so we've scaled the equipment as much as possible.
Okay.
But the kit is very deliberate in that we thought, like, I'm a hand drummer by trade. Like,
okay.
I'm actually a hand percussionist. I play a little kit, as you saw, but the majority of what I do is hand percussion. We considered when we were building this class, do we want to do a kit? And the authenticity of what we were going for, yes, it needs to be a kick and a snare for sure.
It's a small kick drum too, right?
Yeah, so that's the Questlove kit. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
okay,
that's what that is.
Questlove is from the Roots.
From the Roots, yep.
Do they still play with Jimmy Fallon?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Questlove designed that drum kit because he was sick of not being able to set up his normal drum kit in clubs in New York City. So
smart.
So
it packed a punch.
Oh, it's a great kit.
Yeah,
it's a really great kit. And it doesn't sound small, like you said.
No. I mean, but the size of that kick drum, what is that? 15 inches?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's small.
It's essentially a floor tom.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the same size. I actually use a floor tom case to carry it. So it's a very small drum, but yeah, it works, and that's really all we need. Like all of the cymbal stuff that I do, it's just an open hi-hat. And I put my wallet or my phone on the snare.
Saw that.
And I have bamboo sticks, and like it has everything that it needs in the energy level, but also it's manageable from a logistics standpoint, and audibly too. It's not too loud.
So when you then we'll have bigger concerts. You have one coming up, correct?
Yeah. November 10th we'll be in Tarrytown at the JCC.
I got to make sure that this comes out before. I think this comes out before that. Well, I'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But so as you scale up, right? You do a bigger concert. How many people are you looking to have on? How many people are playing instruments in the band?
So there's it's a 10-piece band.
A 10-piece band. So,
so we have full horn section. We have percussion, and then drums, 2 guitars, keys, and 3 vocalists.
So that's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you guys get to practice beforehand, or is this kind of like more of a live jam session?
Oh no, it's very scripted.
Okay.
It's a show from top to bottom that we've designed, and we sort of rolled it out in its infancy at the end of last year, and now I think we've done 8 or 9 of them. Which is
of the concerts.
Of the concerts.
Like not these weekly. So you do this weekly.
Yeah. The weekly thing is very different. Some of the concepts translate.
Probably test them out there, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of testing and a lot of experimenting within the class structure. But the show itself was actually designed. Well, you asked about practicing. All the people in the band are full-time musicians, and teachers, and so the scheduling's troubling, to say the least.
Teachers is in like school teachers.
Our whole horn section are all music teachers.
Okay. So they teach music and are teachers in a school.
And are gigging musicians. They all play weddings. They all play in 6 bands. Like it's like this is their life. This is what they do.
Yeah.
We designed the show to be as easy as possible to replicate.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the logistics were kind of put in on the front end, knowing someone's not going to be available. And, so I have probably a roster of about 15 musicians at this point who know the show and can step in, several bass players, several drummers. Like we try to make it so that everything can roll on if one person's not available. It doesn't totally work that way. Our vocalist Natasha is like pretty essential in almost every regard, and if she wasn't available, I probably would not take a gig at this point. But even she said herself, at some point we're gonna have to expand on that too, because as we grow, it's the scaling of a business conversation at that point. So that's what, what we're trying to solve for both simultaneously while maintaining the integrity of the music and the organization and all that stuff.
So now what sets you guys, so you're saying that it needs to be a good show first and foremost, right?
Yep.
Like that is the inclusive part of it, is making sure that the 8-year-old, the brother with autism, and the mother and the grandmother all enjoy the show. Yeah. What are you guys doing differently than if I were going to go see, I don't even know who's like popular right now. That's somebody I'm like thinking the Chili Peppers, but I feel like I'm dating myself even saying the Chili Peppers. But let's just stick with that. If I was going to go see the Chili Peppers right now, obviously they're a massive stadium band, but I don't know, something, the Roots. If I were going to go see the Roots, right? Like what is the, what's the difference between that and coming to a show that is inclusive or an especially everyone's show?
I think the interactive component is the most obvious answer. We project at the full production, which we call the Especially Everyone experience. We project all of our lyrics on a screen to, encourage these types of participatory components of, audience and band. We try to break that barrier.
Yeah.
But, like I was saying before, the what's your name feature where we're going through the audience, that type of thing. But as it pertains to the field of special needs and no one's bringing a 10-piece band and calling it a sensory friendly show. And
right.
I also have a huge production team, not a huge production team. They're an intense production team that really are focused on these elements of the sound and the light design that are make it authentically sensory friendly. We're keeping all of the decibels, in the 95 to 100 range,
and I noticed that for sure. Like
we use drum shields to get the wash of the cymbals away. Yeah. Our light show is very deliberate in we put lights in cubes. It softens everything. Like nothing's particularly fast moving or so it's it's every component and then even the break area, and something that's been incorporated recently is we're bringing a lot of the sensory equipment into the actual show, which wasn't how it started. We used to have an area where it was kind of more fun, but also as a break area. And the show we played in New Jersey in September, we ended up putting like moon mats on the floor, and we had some like wavy scarves and stuff, and it created this whole other dynamic within the capacity of the show, to the point where we pivoted, and now our break area is going to be very like chill, low lighting, some type of healing frequency or something. But
so something that's like really contrasting to a show environment.
Right. Yeah. The assumption being this is a little overstimulating in the show. I need to step out. Okay, what do you need to step out to? Here are some interventions and things you can use to get back on track and then hopefully get back into the show.
Yeah. And so I guess the difference then there is you're keeping all these things in mind. So it's not that you're not doing necessarily anything to like the music side of things, aside from lowering the volume a little bit.
Right, exactly. And I think there's choices that are being made where the tempos are considered, right? Where it's like we want a high energy music. Also, the spectrum of genres. We have 6 original songs, which we're recording right now.
Very cool.
And each of them are dramatically different. We have an African groove song. We have a 90s hip hop song. We have a reggae song. Like it's the spectrum of music in a sense. And I'm very grateful that I have a band that can do that.
Yeah.
And do it well. So yeah, I think all of these kind of combined, nothing's particularly groundbreaking in the sense that it's never been done before, but we're really considering how the different ways that people process a live music experience and trying to check as many of those boxes as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't even realize this, but after I left Wednesday, like my ears weren't hurting.
Yeah. What a joy. And then and then the question from there is like, why do they have to anyway? Like,
I know.
It's really strange since I've embarked on all of this stuff. Like to some degree, there's, and this is some of the input that I'm getting from my team and the people who are occupational therapists, and like even sensory processing is dramatically different. Some people think that sensory friendly means that we dumb everything down. And in reality, there are plenty of people that are, have sensory processing disorder and want that heavy, heavy bass, or they want it loud and they're not bothered by sound. So we try to accommodate all of the different ways, some of which can be, contradictive.
Yeah.
But, we try.
I wonder almost if it's like the intention or the purpose of the show, right? Like, I feel like I've played in a band, and to a degree, you're kind of trying to show off. Yeah. And I don't mean that I kind of do actually in an egotistical way, but like you're trying to be a good member in the band and like you want to be heard, right? Like you're playing music to be heard. And not that it's not, I'm sure there's absolutely an element of that. I mean, that's part of being a musician is to like play their craft. You put all this time and effort into something, but it's almost like the purpose of the show is literally to include everyone in on it. So all of a sudden you're not competing against the other people in the band to make sure that you're being heard.
Yeah.
I'm dumbing that down a lot. Like I know that's not like what happens in a band.
It's accurate though.
But it's definitely, I think it's like it might not be a conscious thought that you have when you're playing with a band in just a typical setting, but it's definitely something that's there. Like all the time, I'm like, yo, can you turn my bass? Can you turn my bass? Can you turn my bass? Like, especially that's like the classic, meme as a bass player. Like but like
it's the low end.
Yeah. But I mean, I wonder if, you're going in there with like, okay, your audience and you're not going to crank it to 120 decibels. Like you're going to keep it below 95. And that is going to just just the fact that you save everyone's ears. Like I had a great time. It was very enjoyable. And I didn't walk out with my ears ringing. Yeah. Right. And
you're right about that. And the way I would describe it is the band's role in especially everyone is to facilitate the experience.
Right.
Like there's a fine line between, and they have to do both. They have to teeter between creating the moment, right? Like facilitating, putting that drive of energy in there. And then it spreads to the audience. And then at that point, you back off and let the moment be, right? So, a lot of what we did this year was find the right players to do that. And some people have come and gone who were phenomenal players and would have, been the perfect whatever instrument in another band. But it's really a matter of buying into, like, this is not about any one of us.
Right.
And that's even more emphasized in a 10-piece band, right? Where there's like there's two lead guitarists playing at all times, and they are tremendous in creating the space that needs to be there for these moments to occur. So it's like there's a lot of layering between the production and then the musicianship itself. But we're at a point where I'm quite confident in how we're doing things.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
One thing, the last thing I want to touch on, and I want to ask a bunch of other questions, but the last thing about Wednesday, and I want to be careful because I know that you mentioned before, where I'm going. Yeah, they don't want to get anybody in trouble, but you've essentially created a way for the audience to participate, not just rhythmically with the hand drums, but melodically with an instrument. Can I say that?
Yeah,
is that
course,
all right?
Yeah.
And I'm not getting into the nitty gritty because you're going to put something out eventually, I'm assuming. But that was very cool. Long story short, there's an instrument where the audience can play along with you guys, and there's no way for them to hit a wrong note.
Yeah.
So therefore, they can melodically play along with you guys.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Very cool.
It is. So it's called the Magical Music Machine. It is it's something we've all sort of crafted through these experiences, and it was built by our production manager.
Yeah, it's genius, man.
It's really cool.
It's really cool.
You had mentioned we're not getting into too many details, only because we have a patent pending. So I'm trying to sort all that stuff.
And
out.
Just to be clear too, because I also as a musician and as someone that understands the technology behind music, I get the machine. So I don't want to I don't want to go into it because I'd be like, oh, you got to do this, that. It's
and even that approach is not that's not who I would be happy to talk. I keep now I'm in this interesting space where lawyers are like, be careful what you say. I was like, all right,
no, but you should be because I mean, I saw that and instantly was like that.
Right. Yeah. The intellectual property.
That is cool.
But yeah, what it allows is exactly as you said.
Yeah.
People can jam with a live band in a live setting, and it's been transformed. It's been incredible. Just as an observer, the biggest part where I felt that way was we brought it to a dementia clinic at River House in Greenwich, and we had it was, I think for me, it's always profound because you see the experience of a live music. As we were saying before, people have not had that experience, and especially in a full production, there's a 10-piece band behind them, and then they get to be the lead soloist.
Oh yeah. That sound cuts through.
Awesome.
Yeah.
At River House too, like there was more. I think the shift between the tentative approach to walking up to the instrument and then 2, 3, 4 hits, and you're like, now they hear it, they feel it, and the look was so profoundly different from when they were approaching the instrument to when they left. I was like, wow, okay, we're onto something here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and it's big and purple. It looks like Dr. Seuss might have been involved. So it's designed to encourage you to try it. And
it was funny too because you had it under, like, you literally had it under wraps.
Yes.
Like literally you had a sheet over it, and it was like, all right, this is the time in the show, the magical music machine, and you just ripped the thing off, and I'm like, wow. What is that? And I'm already like, okay, like I'm already looking at it and like processing like what that thing is.
Yeah.
And then to hear it being played along with Joe, right? Joe was playing the guitar, laying down like the rhythm for it.
Yep.
This is very cool. And it was immediately like, I mean, just reflecting back on it, you hand out the hand drums, and that's fun to be part of a drum circle, and you're part of a group. But I feel like the differences between a rhythmic instrument and a melodic instrument, that's weird to say because all instruments are rhythmic, right? Like you have to have some semblance of rhythm to be cohesive with other people, right?
Sure.
It almost felt like with that device, it let an individual express themselves in a way that I don't think they necessarily could with just a hand drum, right? Like there's the melodic element to it, right? There's the story element, the ups and downs of a run or whatever it is, and like the capabilities and the possibilities of that. It was very cool to see. I remember one gentleman walked up, and like everyone's having a good time with it, and like this is fun. But one gentleman walked up, and he was on it like both rhythmically and started doing some chords, some 2-note chords, and you saw all the musicians in the room being like, all right, like that sounds really good. It was a really cool like experience where I don't know, it just I'm super happy for you guys when that gets like put together. We'll have to talk about it in more detail for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it's been one of the highlights of this whole journey and all that, and it's in every capacity it's a little different. Like over the summer we were bringing it to schools or summer camps, and the little kids were playing them, it was like I walked out of that show and turned to the band, and I was like, I felt like I was in Jurassic Park. Like as soon, and I hide that there was a blanket over it when you saw it. Yeah.
No one else can look at or pay attention to anything else if they see it because it's bright purple and it's this odd shape and big buttons, and it's like, what the heck is that thing?
Yeah. It's bright.
So as soon, it was like, literally, I took the blanket off. It was like velociraptors swarmed me, and then I tried to regain control at that point, and
it looks pretty sturdy.
Oh, yes. But like the idea is to the point where like it's supposed to sound good when 8 small children are playing it at the same time.
I guess that could overwhelm
cacophony. And it was fun. Everyone had a great time. And But I am certain now that we can't reveal it until it is time.
Ready.
It is time to use it.
Yeah, this is very cool. So backing up a hair now, what led you? And I might have asked it earlier, but like so. Let's start with this music. When did you start playing music? What got you into that?
My family is musical. I started playing trumpet in like 2nd grade or 1st grade. Well, whenever you do that,
like at the school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I was in all of, and my dad's a trumpet player. My sister's a trumpet player. My brother's a trumpet player. So I did marching band all the way through high school. I was in all the pit orchestras and all that. And then how I got into a band, quite literally, I was in choir and someone asked me in 8th grade if I would sing in their band, and I did. And then percussion came out of that too, because they would be jamming and I would be the singer, and I felt
gotta do something
really out of place.
Yeah.
I feel awkward now, so I bought percussion and became a percussionist. And
that's so funny.
That ended up dictating my entire, I guess, young adulthood. Right? I toured and played in an original band for 10 years.
Very cool.
And that was my whole identity for that portion of my life. It's how I met my wife. That's all of so many things came from that time in my life. I couldn't think of a better way to grow up and experience the world. And we, it's not like we were touring international or anything, mostly the East Coast, but meeting people as a vehicle to meet people and to initiate projects and whatever it was. That's really what I'm trying to replicate through Especially Everyone, because I understand fully what a band can mean beyond just playing. We were the soundtrack for a whole portion of people's lives, our close group of friends, however many, 15, 20 of them, whatever it is. But we just did a reunion show with my original band, and it was cool to literally watch the nostalgia on people's faces. I remember hearing the song 100 times when we used to jump in the van with you, and being in a band is a cool thing.
Yes.
It's a really cool thing to do. And, I think I've laughed with several members of the band now where it's every band gets to a point where you feel washed up in a way, or how much longer can I play for drunk people, or whatever that question is. And I feel through Especially Everyone, we found the adult version of that, where it's this feels good, it sounds good, it's fun, we're making some money doing it, and it's all right, cool, this is what a band means when you're in your 30s and 40s.
It's the healthy approach to it too, right? It's just we're good, this is content, and you always want to be better, but no, being in a band is great. I definitely miss it. I miss it and I don't miss it, because it's, yes. Exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, of course.
It's like having, 3 girlfriends or something.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it can be very drama filled, but also very rewarding, very fun.
And we laugh too, because our Especially Everyone experience shows are Sunday afternoons, and I'm home on my couch by 6 p.m. and it's why didn't we do it this way all the time?
I know.
The whole 4 a.m. loadout is I don't want to ever do that again. It's if this continues in the way that it's continuing, I don't have to anymore.
Yeah. No, but it's also I don't know why this just popped in my head, but it also, the 4 a.m. thing just reminded me of and also what you're saying before about experiencing life and learn, experiencing new places. It just reminded me, I probably would have never had, there's this, I don't know if it's there anymore, down in the Village in New York City. They have a pizza place that sells slices, that only sells artichoke pizza slices on the corner of one of the, and I remember getting it at 3 a.m. because that was the only thing, it was the easiest thing to get anyways. And how do you have a business of just selling artichokes pizzas by the slice?
Now I want to go check that out.
I don't know if it's still there. This was 10 years ago. It was really good though.
Yeah,
it was delicious. But
there's a whole life. And when we were touring, everyone would make fun of us because we all had full-time jobs. So we would come home. We'd play Boston on a Wednesday night or something and come back. We'd get home at 6:30 in the morning, and we'd all be at work by 8 o'clock.
While you were teaching?
Yeah, I wasn't one of the teachers, but our keyboardist, who's still in Especially Everyone, is he was teaching preschool. It was we would laugh about people people don't know we have a whole other life.
That sounds horrific. How do you?
Our bassist would do floors. His dad owned a flooring company, so he would 8 a.m. he's on his knees ripping nails out of it. But we loved it. We talk about it now, how the hell did we do this?
No, I know,
because we loved it.
I know. I remember a time. The first day I ever worked with a kid with autism. First day ever. The night before, I played in the Village. And we took we might have played at Harlem, but we took a wrong turn going home, and I ended up in Danbury, and our phones were all dead, so we didn't have GPS, and we were able to figure it out, but we didn't know we were on the wrong road for a while. We had to pull over, look at a map,
okay.
I didn't get to sleep until 4 a.m. Was up by 6. And it was and I didn't know I was going to work with this kid. It was my first day. They were like, hey, you know what, Nick, this is like my third year working as a paraprofessional. And they're like, hey, you're doing a pretty good job. Like we're third summer, I should say. We're going to try to put you with this little guy. To this day, I ended up working with him for 2 years, but he was the hardest kid I ever worked with. Yeah. So like, just to put things in perspective, like he was not only the first kid I ever worked with autism, but also like the most behavioral and intense kid I ever worked with. And my first day, I remember working with him and I was like, I can't stay awake right now. And this kid is like,
that'll keep you awake.
We're right. Like it kept me awake, but I was like, this is not good. And then I crashed that night, came back the next day and was like, all right, time to make a second first impression and do this.
I've had some moments too. It's like, you know, the worlds collide in one moment, but
I can't. Yeah, no. Yeah. I remember some like situations like that. Yeah, no. I used to do ridiculous things.
I guess we all did at that time,
right?
And we, you know, sit here now and be like, I don't know how the hell we did that.
Well, but, just knowing what it takes to be in a classroom, like it's just that literally is like.
And in a band, for that matter, right?
Right.
The stuff they don't put on the magazines is like all the equipment that, you know. And our band was 5 pieces, but we had a full trailer of equipment, and it was like, you know, they don't glorify that aspect of it because it shouldn't be. But
and you were the singer and the percussionist. Yeah. So you were kind enough and actually helped, right?
Yes.
And like put the stuff in and out. Yeah, yes,
I was one of the 2 people that loaded the trailer.
I'm putting my singer on blast right now, but he did not help.
Yeah.
Not often.
I know the kind.
Love you, Jamie. But no, they definitely, it was like mainly on the drummer and I, like just lugging everything.
Yeah.
I also had an SUV, so it was kind of like.
We had a trailer, so it was one. But our drummer notoriously would socialize after the shows, and we'd have to put his drums in first on the trailer, so we couldn't do anything until. So you know that was often a point of contention.
We started getting really friendly with other bands that would bring equipment and then just try to like
backline.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That was like we would either share or just like, you know, try to get on those shows and whatnot, and it usually worked out.
I know someone who. He's a prominent musician, and like his whole business model is to find up and coming bands and just use their gear and book them as the opening band and just use their gear. They just need to make sure that they have a keyboardist in the band, and then because we were that band a few times, that's how I know it.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. So, but you play drums now, so that's just from the hand percussion, like the skills.
Yeah,
transfer over.
It works for what we do. I wouldn't play a wedding or anything with my skill set, but I can hold it down.
Are you the drummer when you play the big concerts too?
No.
What do you do then? Are you more facilitating?
I am the facilitator.
Okay,
yeah.
the facilitator.
Yeah. For the most part, I mean, this project started. We had actually created a character for one of my friends. His name's Kevin Hansis. We created the Great Hanzini. And it was sort of like this wizard. I don't even entirely know what we were going for. But he was facilitating, and it was a lot of fun. But he didn't have the same sense of time. It's like it's a lot about timing. It's a lot about what to let go, what not to let go.
In what regards?
Just like in the moments and the experiences that kind of happen.
I understand.
And the show was different then too. It was sort of a cover show at that point where he was. You know, facilitating one song into the next. Now it's way more interactive, and it requires a specific skill set. So I sort of by default became the facilitator. It wasn't truly my vision, but now it's worked. So I'm one of the vocalists. I have 2 vocalists behind me, and then I actually don't even perform on the stage for the majority of the show, if at all. The last couple shows I haven't even walked onto the stage. I have a boom mic on the floor with 1 drum, which has been a little problematic because I lose control of that drum almost instantly these days. So I have to reconsider that one. But I am the facilitator.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then your other background in all of this is you're saying that you taught. You've been. Can you tell me a little bit more? Like what kind of led you down that path?
I had volunteered at an autism program. That was the initial introduction to this field. People ask me all the time why I did that. I actually don't have an answer. I was doing a lot. I was a waiter. I was working on pools.
How old?
I was 21 or something like
you
that.
Just felt like going into an
and
office.
I had a lot of different jobs, and was just like, these are fine, but like, what am I? This is not what I'm gonna do. And I just
playing in a band during all this too.
Yes.
Okay.
I was playing, and that, you know, as we all do who play in bands, that kind of felt like what I was gonna do for a long time, and like we had a plan to quit our jobs and tour, and when it came down to actually do it, we didn't want to, or like a couple people backed out.
I understand that.
As do I, and I'm so glad we didn't do that. But so I just started volunteering there and instantly felt comfortable and was like, I identified it as something I liked and something I was good at. So I actually got hired at that program that I volunteered and worked there for 5 years. And then it turned into, you know, through that, I found a private client. So I was actually commuting back and forth to Boston every week for like 6 years. I did that.
For 6 years?
Yeah. I worked for a family who had their son in Massachusetts, and I would drive from New Jersey to Massachusetts. We'd spend Sunday and Monday there.
Oh my goodness, I'm thinking Connecticut. You drove from Jersey.
Jersey.
So what is that, a 4 or 5 hour drive?
Yeah, like 4 hours.
Yeah.
We'd stay overnight and we'd come back. But like the majority of the experiences, like it introduced me to, because at that point I had 4 or 5 years of experience in the field, right? And similar to what you shared briefly about that one client, this client was it opened an entire new world. It's on that far end of the spectrum that it's not in mainstream culture. So I very distinctly remember the first time I walked into his SIU unit, and
what does that mean? Sorry,
good question. We just called it the SIU.
I love this about special education. You have two people that are in. Yeah, we're in the field, and there are acronyms that we don't know, or abbreviations.
I did know at one point, but it's been it's a good question. I'm going to look that up as soon as I leave.
This is why it's got to be so hard for parents.
Severe intensity unit. That might be it. I don't know.
I'm gonna have no idea.
It was self-injurious behavior. It was a lot of equipment.
Self-injurious unit.
Could be.
Okay.
That feels like a little bit of a stretch because not everybody was.
Right. Okay.
But equipment. Everyone was wearing equipment. And even
what do you mean by that?
Arm limiters.
Dude, I haven't even done that much. Okay, so
arm limiters. All the staff was
limiters, meaning like
it was a brace that didn't allow them to bend their arm because they would punch themselves in the head.
They were wearing it.
The clients were.
Oh my goodness.
But like we did some stuff, and really my job in that setting was to facilitate the world. Like we used to take him out. We used to go do things, and the things that worked for him were amazing, and I know firsthand what that meant to us. And you know, it was really important, and we loved it. I got really close to the family, and still am to this day. And
that's awesome.
But like my whole world opened up there, and then at that point, I decided I'm going back for my master's. This is what I'm going to do. So I got a master's in
SpED, or
it's actually in education. I had planned to be an ABA therapist.
BCBA.
I was on the BCBA track,
which is a board certified behavior analyst.
Yep, there's an acronym we know
for applied behavioral analysis.
That's right.
Which is a very popular approach to working with kids with. Well, it usually gets kind of pigeonholed with autism, but it's behaviors in general.
Yeah, right.
And it's a form of psychology. It's one way of doing it. It's generally it's covered by insurance. It's one of is the only thing
at a time I believe it was. And
yeah,
I think it's expanded now. Yeah. Beyond that, but like that was the majority of. If you wanted to do this, that was the track you.
I was in the same boat. Yeah.
But I ended up, you know, as the story goes, like 75% into my degree, decided this is not a good fit for me. So I abandoned the BCBA track and just ended up getting the master's.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of what I'm describing, you know, our principles with especially everyone, and my own personal principles were not represented in a lot of the places I was working, and I was really struggling with that. I was having an existential crisis for quite some time, just being like, this is the story I always tell, and the real thing that broke me from like, I don't think I want to do this anymore, was I was working at an ABA agency, and my supervisor called me in for feedback and said, listen, you're doing a really good job, but you have way too much personality in your sessions. And I was like,
Sorry.
I don't.
Probably just, I just made that so hard for the editor. Sorry, I just clipped the mic so bad.
But yeah, that was legitimately the feedback I got. And the reason for it was because I was connecting too deeply with my clients. And I remember I had a client at the time who loved to read books. So I was reading the books with him, which obviously took time, and then using the characters to kind of work through things with him. I mean, he had a lot of verbal language, and it was working. We were truly connecting, and I was putting the time into doing that. But they wanted me to pump out data and take as many clients in a day as possible so that they could send the bills. And I understand that game, but that's not why I got into this. And it was really hard for me to kind of reimagine what my life would look like if I didn't want to be a BCBA.
Yeah. I definitely, I kind of stayed straight away from it too, because it just wasn't consistent enough. Like I implemented it well, and I would have kids that responded really well to it. They grew a lot, but then there's other kids that just didn't respond to it at all. And it was like, if this is supposed to be this end all be all,
yeah. But I mean, I think that's the point. That was the problem for me, was like, in many senses, they were sucking the human out of the work, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I think the principles of behavior, as you said before, it's not a special needs or autism specific science at all. We're talking about behavior in the most broadest form.
It's everything that we do. Right. Everything that we do is a behavior. Me moving my hands like this is a behavior, right? Like what we are our actions are behaviors. Therefore, it has nothing to do with any disability category.
Right. But at the end of the day, you need, like, the work happens when you are able to connect with someone.
100%.
And you can't connect with someone without earning their trust, and that takes time. And those things were not being addressed in those settings, and it was a big problem for me. Like, I got into this so that I could connect with people and help them in a long-term way, and that was just, there was no space for that. I was getting negative feedback about trying to do that. I was like,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
And, I've heard many other people have similar stories, and, and I actually love ABA, and the other thing I realized kind of in that process is it's not the therapy, it's the therapist, right? Like, I know a lot of BCBAs who are incredible at what they do, and they don't remove the human out of the work that they do. They connect and all of the things that I want. But I was freaked out to a point where I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And there was also a logistical element to it where I would have had to work at the company I worked for 4 years to get all the credit.
What is it? 2,000 hours? 2,000 hours, right?
It was crazy. And I was like, I didn't like, it was 6 months, and I was like, I can't, 3.5 more years of this? Like, nah. And like, I'm already on the fence if I want to do this, that's all I need to know. So So I bailed on that.
I mean, it's definitely hard to get into. I mean, I do appreciate that, like, to become a BCBA. I remember it being like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, but as it should be to some degree.
100%.
Doctors and all those things. There's lots to go to do it.
I mean, it's not. You don't get a doctorate when you become a BCBA, but the amount of time you put in is essentially equivalent to a PhD or
similar
to a doctorate degree. Yeah. No, it's definitely a lot. And also I just want to clarify, like, I work with some incredible BCBAs. Yeah. Like, it's not like I'm
as do I.
My broader picture there, like, I just think there's more to learning than just ABA. Yeah. And then I think sometimes there's some people that are like, this is the way, this is the only way. And I'm like, nah, I don't agree with that.
And the BCBAs that I'm referring to, who I respect tremendously, would agree with
you. Okay,
they would say, like, and they're great at what they do because they can pivot and I think that's, like, at the core of all of this work, right? You have to be able to adjust,
specialized instruction.
If you can't adjust and you're not willing to abandon your plan in the middle of it because you understand it's not working, then you're screwed. Like, you're not going to be able to make that connection or do anything meaningful because if you're being rigid about I prepared this lesson, like, it doesn't work that way.
No,
it just doesn't work that way.
Well, it's also like you might have not prepared it well. Like,
right,
I mean,
exactly.
One of the things that I always say, there's exceptions to this rule, but if I'm teaching something, whether it's in a class, whether it's special education, I mean, whether it's I teach jujitsu, like whatever it is, if everyone is struggling with the thing that I just taught, it's probably my fault.
Right. Yeah.
So therefore, the lesson, either I didn't deliver it well, or I delivered it exactly as I designed it, and it's not a good lesson. But you have to recognize that and be like, you know what, guys, my bad. Let's do this. Let's finish today. Let's have a good day.
Right.
Come back tomorrow, and we'll do this better. Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So, in just with all that being said, I think that it's cool that you bring up that pivoting factor, and that personalization. I mean, I think when you work with kids or work with anybody, rapport is the first thing that you should be working on. Yeah. I was just talking to somebody today, and they were asking me, you know, what do I do when I teach? What's the first thing you do with a new kid or a new client for my advocacy work? And it's the very first thing is rapport. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah. And I would say that it has to be that way probably for the first 3, 4, 5 in varying degrees.
Oh, yeah.
But like I worked with, I have 2 clients now that it took me, I don't know, a month probably, to the point where, and I let a lot of things go behaviorally, where I was looking at it and be like, this is not the time to correct that. Like, and I think that a lot of people go wrong there, where they come in. One place I used to see it all the time is when there's home therapists, and they come in and they just start controlling immediately. And it's like, let's remove the special needs component for a moment. If someone walked into your home and started controlling every movement you make, what would you want to do? Like, you would want to punch them in the face, and like, that's what just happened. So like that, you know, it blows my mind sometimes where, you know, that foresight of why even the diagnosis of behavior is, I think some of the best teachers I've ever seen have partnered with their clients, and it's truly collaborative in how are we going to tackle this situation. But there's no divide between, the rapport is such that there's no divide between the teacher and the client, and they're really kind of working hand in hand to do whatever is the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's ultimately what it's all about, right? Like if it's coming together to learn things, and much like what you're doing with Especially Everyone, and as the facilitator himself. P, we're gonna wrap this up, but where can people find you and find out more about Especially Everyone?
EspeciallyEveryone.org is probably the best place. I just put together my LinkedIn profile, as I've been told to do for many months, so I am on it now.
We'll join. I've had one and just not used it. I'm using it now.
I've had many people tell me it's absolutely essential, and I reached out to my first person yesterday, and so I am also on LinkedIn as of yesterday.
Cool.
And yeah, that's about it.
All right, awesome. And then the concert coming up, when's that?
Oh yes, that is November 10th.
Where's that going to be?
In Tarrytown at the Shames JCC
in New York.
In New York,
right? New York, okay.
Right before the bridge. Yeah.
Cool.
It'll be a good one. We're rolling it all out, and it's gonna be a good time.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, or if you want to be on the show at all, if you have any relationship to special education, please hit me up at thespedspace@gmail.com. And otherwise, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and have a lovely day.